The aim of this lesson is to analyse the rubric for Standard English Module B, Close Study of Text. The knowledge and understanding developed will assist Year 12 students with their study and essay writing. The rubric states, this module requires students to engage in detailed analysis of a text. Whenever you're being asked to analyse a text, you'll need to make a detailed examination of its elements and structure. The next part of the rubric asks you to look at your prescribed text as a whole. It develops students' understanding of how the ideas, forms, and language of a text interact within the text and may affect those responding to it. The key words in this section of the rubric are ideas, form, and language. Ideas are what the text teaches us about the human experience. Form refers to genre and type of text, for example, mystery novel or Shakespearean comedy. Language is the means of expressing ideas or feelings. In a novel, you will look at lexical choices. Lexical is a fancy way of saying word choices, grammatical choices, and literary techniques. As you're studying, you need to consider what is being said, how is it being said, and, to a lesser extent for this module, why is it being said. In a close study of text, you need to analyse how meaning is shaped and emotion evoked for responders through these ideas, form, and language. I'd recommend you use tables to have an integrated analysis of ideas, form, and language. Start with the key idea or ideas within the text. What does the text teach us about the human experience? How has the composer constructed the text so that you, the responder, are left thinking about these ideas? Here you need to analyse how the composer has used form and language together to shape meaning and affect you. I'd also recommend that you read essays that critics have written about your text. There are a variety of different places you can find these criticisms: your school or university library, JSTOR, Google Scholar, etc. When you find an essay on your text, it will also have quotes from other critics, who you can then search for as well, especially if you like their ideas. In particular, I'd recommend looking for the essays that analyse the text ideas, form, and language, because these are the kind of nuts and bolts of Module B. After you read an essay, write down what it's about in your own words. This will help you to avoid plagiarism. However, always be on the lookout for evocative new words, especially verbs, in these essays. I think you should also be on the hunt for great words to use in your own essay. English teachers like words, and guess what? The people marking your essay will be English teachers. I'd recommend that you create a glossary of words for every module and area of study that you do. Hopefully, I'm talking to some fresh-faced Year 12 students just about to embark on their Year 12 studies. Again, I encourage my students across all year groups to squirrel away good words or phrases when they come across them. For your HSC, some of these great words will work across a variety of modules. Just make sure that you don't overuse any word in one essay. It's not good writing. Find a synonym instead. The rubric also states, each elective in this module involves close study of a single text from a list of prescribed texts. Students engage with the text imaginatively, affectively, and critically. You're being asked to engage with the text imaginatively, which is your own personal response to the text, affectively, which is your emotional response, and critically, which is your analysis and evaluation of the text. The rubric states that students explore and analyse particular characteristics of the text, considering how these shape meaning. They also consider the ways in which these characteristics establish the text's distinctive qualities. The characteristics are the ideas, form, and language, and you need to consider how the composer's use of these elements makes the text different and easy to recognise. Finally, the rubric discusses what you will need to write in your exam, your composition. Note, it says composition, not essay. In the exam, you may be asked to compose using different forms and media. You may be asked to write a journal, a diary entry, interview, etc. The enormous challenge that Module B poses for students is that the examiners could really ask you pretty much anything about your text, so you need to know it really, really well. What we do know is that the HSC exam committee uses the rubric to devise the exam question. Therefore, you need to know the rubric back to front, and you need to have a range of textual evidence that will allow you to respond to any question that the committee devises. I'd recommend that you highlight the keywords in the rubric, as I've done, then use these keywords as headings. Find quotes or examples that fit under each of these headings, and when the exam question comes out, devised from the language of the rubric, you have a series of quotes that fit the question, no matter what the question is. In the same vein, it's a really valuable exercise to identify what the key idea is in the text. I get all my classes to do this for every text they study. In order to identify the key idea, ask yourself what the text teaches you about the human experience. The next step is to find the quote that epitomizes this idea. This key idea is closely linked to the composer's purpose, which informs the choices that he or she makes it in regards to, you guessed it, form and language. I also like to distill each module down into a single sentence. For me, Module B is how does a composer shape meaning in a distinctive text? Again, I think this exercise is useful and you may come up with a different tagline for the module. Clearly, however, the HSC committee believes that your text has value and significance. That's why they chose to include it in the module. I'd encourage you to check out the markers' feedback from last year's HSC. I've attached a screenshot of some of the feedback from the 2015 HSC for Module B. The markers provide feedback on each text, so I'll leave it up to you to go to the Board of Studies website and check it out. The feedback gives you a really clear idea of the components of both strong and weak essays. I'd also encourage you to check out examples of Band 6 essays. Obviously, the exam committee aren't going to ask the same question twice. What you are looking for in these essays from past HSCs is structure. How are they set out? And like any criticism that you read about your text, keep your eye out for interesting ideas and language choices. When it comes to preparing for your exam, my suggestion is to have a generic essay structure which you practice adapting to different questions. I'd also suggest practicing writing responses in different forms, such as diary entry, letter, etc., just in case you get thrown a curveball in the exam. Regardless of the form, you want to be able to integrate your textual knowledge of the text into your response. I'd suggest working with your classmates to go through the rubric to devise as many different questions about your text as possible. You want to be aiming to write an essay of about 1,000 words, and I think this generic essay structure is your best bet to achieve coherent quantity. However, you must answer the question, so this essay needs to be adaptable. The structure that I recommend is to have an introduction that outlines your thesis and 2 or 3 subtheses. Make sure you are using the language of the question and the rubric in your introduction. In paragraph 2, identify the key idea or ideas of the human experience in the text and discuss how this idea relates to the question. In paragraph 3, examine how the form of the text contributes to the meaning discussed in the previous paragraph. In paragraph 4, examine how the composer's use of language and techniques shapes meaning and makes the text distinctive. Finally, conclude by making a personal evaluation about how the ideas, form and language in the text work together to affect those responding to it. And that's it. You've made it. Again, you are spoilt studying Module B because the texts you are going to study are amazing. It's hard to choose what text I would like to study/teach most. The Life and Crimes of Harry Lavender, or The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time, or Namat Jira, or The Merchant of Venice, or the poetry of Ogeru Nonikol, or the poetry of Wilfred Owen, or Stasi Land, or A Beautiful Mind, or the Australian War Memorial website. I hope you really enjoy whatever text you end up studying. To recap the main points of the lesson, I'd encourage you to read and reread or watch and rewatch your text as many times as possible. Find the key idea or theme in the text, which will be linked to the composer's purpose, and find the quote in the text that best exemplifies this central idea. Learn the rubric and use the language of the rubric in your thesis, subtheses, and topic sentences. Have a planned structure for your essay to make sure you analyse rather than just describe the text. Read the HSC markers feedback from the previous year and learn from past students' strengths and mistakes. So as the orchestra music begins to play, the final thing for me to do is to wish Year 12 students all the best with their studies and exams. Thank you so much for watching.